Today, we are going to explore this topic of wholeness. What is wholeness? What isn't it? And why does it matter to leadership? And everything and in between. And to do this, I'm with Level 52 coach and facilitator, Morgan Alexander, who's also an Olympian, who has many adventures and experiences to share with us. Morgan, welcome to the Executive Commute.
Thanks for having me.
So full disclosure to the listeners is Morgan and I have a deep past, our relationship, and it's not a stretch to say this is a man that I love dearly. In fact, my oldest son is named Morgan because when I was having a son, I thought, who is an individual that represents the qualities I want my son to stand up to? And Morgan Alexander was one of them. So it's awesome to dive into this topic. And Mo, I'm going to ask you perhaps the hardest question in this whole conversation. But what is it that makes you qualified to talk about this topic of wholeness?
I anticipate that being the hardest question. I got a little heads up last night, obviously, and I've been asked this question before. It's funny that the response that I have to that question, that I felt a little bit grouchy about it, to be honest, which is my own stuff, right? My own beliefs coming through. So I flipped the question and I was like, what gives anybody credibility for anything? So I've done stuff. I've been to the Olympics. I've coached at the Olympics. I've worked a bunch of jobs, had a bunch of different titles in various places. What gives me credibility is difficult to answer. I have my own experiences. I'm going through, I would say, life outside of the lines at this point and trying to figure it out much like anyone else. So credibility, I think, is something that's felt more than justified by titles, accomplishments, alphabet soup after people's names. So maybe not credentials or credibility, but some important things to know about me. I spent the last 3 decades in basically every position of every level of sports. I've seen a lot of human performance, like the petri dish that sport is, not just in the physical capacity, but in all capacities. And I've learned, adapted, been inspired, and also moved on from that world and taken with me some things that I think are extremely valuable from that world and some things that I think are better done outside of that world. So I hold a unique tension in this interplay between what is our highest capability as humans, and that at this point, a very clear belief is that goes well outside and beyond the things we see at the Olympics or in professional sport.
So an Olympian, coach at the Olympics, you've been a business owner having a high performance institute.
Sure.
You are a coach, you are an entrepreneur still, investing your efforts and energy into many different enterprises. You're a father, and you also live what many would consider a nomadic life. You live on the beach, sunny location. You live what
in the mountains now.
Okay, in the mountains. In the mountains now. But what many would consider an uncommon life.
Yeah.
And in the past year or so, you've, for lack of a better term, you've been through the fire.
Yeah, you could say that literally and figuratively multiple times.
Yeah, why don't you take us into that?
Yeah, we actually lived in Nova Scotia for the last number of years. I think we moved there, 2021? 2020, we moved to Nova Scotia. We had wildfires, so there's this theme of fire, and there's some magic in fire. I think of, as I was thinking about this call, the magic of sitting around a campfire and all the beautiful things that fire provides us as human beings. And also I've seen the other side of fire. So we were in the midst of one of the largest fires that has been in Canada, wild, out of control, less than a kilometer from our house, evacuated multiple times, went through the exercise of losing all of our stuff multiple times. and decided, inspired, I would say, from that experience to make some changes in our lives, to see what more is possible. Not running away from it, but really reconsidering the fact that we lost everything in our head, that exercise, and looking, okay, what would we create if we started from burnt ground again? So that led us on an adventure. We went to Jamaica. We went to Nicaragua, where we loved. Loved is, I don't know, maybe that's the correct word. We learned richly in Nicaragua, a very different lifestyle, for lack of a better word, different government, different language, different culture, different nature was probably the most powerful aspect that we faced, but had adjusted and adapted our nervous systems. Like the time when we landed in Nicaragua, one of the most challenging, most demanding moments of my nervous system being like, what did I do with my family, where we're now in Central America? We don't know the language, yada, yada, yada. But
And just by the way, how old were the kids at that point?
the kids were, what was it, 2 years ago? So they were 7 and 2.
Okay.
7 and 2. Yeah.
Much
So
different than if it was just you and your wife.
absolutely, we would be gallivanting around the globe probably. No. And they benefited. A large reason why we moved there was to expose them to that type of environment that asked or demanded more of them. And we adapted and we adjusted with varying levels of success, but a lot of learnings, and planned to stay there up until we had another fire, a kitchen fire. I was exploded, more or less, not more or less, a full gnarly like movie explosion, where my body was completely.
Yeah, break that down for us. It help us envision when you say exploded, what happened?
Just, I actually had a call. It was actually a level 52 call I was preparing for. I think I was 25 minutes away from call time, and I started the stove in my kitchen. So I turned, everything's gas, so I turned it. It had been like a little flutzy for a while, and a little bit of a regret is that I didn't bring it to attention later, because it was in my radar that I was like, something's wrong here. Anyways, turned the gas Snyder, and it went the normal flicking sound. It did it once. On the second time it was supposed to happen, it was the biggest explosion, auditory sound I've ever heard in my life. And I closed my eyes. Everything went white. I thought I was dead until I felt my lips melting. Yeah. Talk about being pulled into the present moment. Opened my eyes, and everything was on fire. Like everything was on fire. I was engulfed like a superhero. I can't remember what the superhero that's covered in flames is, but like totally covered in flames. So thank God I was by myself at the time, but thank God we had a swimming pool, as common in that part of the world for the lifestyle we were living. So I jumped into the pool and, yeah, went through a nervous system reaction, I jumped out of the pool. I called my wife. I texted my colleagues at level 52 in the midst of my, prioritizing. Once I realized I was still alive, I have to let people know that I'm not going to be attending work today, which is crazy, but that's, where you are. Yeah, pretty gnarly, like rehab. We were
When
able
you say
to
gnarly, what
gnarly,
made it gnarly?
gnarly in that, like, it's like objectively a near death experience. You read about them, but when you have it, it's a different thing. So I felt, I would say, awakened in that moment, where it's like the closest I've felt to spirit in my life. I feel like it could have gone another way, and for whatever reason I was granted another opportunity. But the rehab demanded a lot. So I spent, I think, 3 weeks bedridden. I couldn't get out of bed, bedpan, like humiliating. I had my skin scrubbed off. It was ended up being 2nd-degree burns, which is supposed to be the most painful. Scrubbed off my legs, chlorine baths. Yeah, it took more of me than I thought existed.
What do you mean by that?
You know, I thought I have, we talk about mindset and stuff that I learned from sport or through entrepreneurship or reading books. Um, Not even close, you know? You have these like theoretical experience or theoretical knowledge that you acquire over time, but being put to the test in that regard um, is just a whole nother level. So, aside, there was a physical healing that was occurring. The biggest thing that I felt is I was like very clearly in a post traumatic stress response. Wasn't diagnosed by a doctor. It was nervous system flipped on, not any type of fight or flight that I've ever experienced before, like PTSD. We had fireworks go off 2 nights later, you know? There's a demand. Not being able to sleep. My jaw was like locked shut for I think 10 days, where I was like, I can't undo this tension in my body. So I had help from a number of friends, a number of healers. The doctor that came and attended me bedside was out of this world, but it was up to me to do the work throughout, day in and day out. And my biggest fear, once I kind of like got my feet set, I would say 2 days after, was I was like, I cannot let this get stuck in my body. The jaw, my eyes, my ears, my senses, the tone in my body. I cannot let this remain locked in my body and become a prison.
If physically or mentally.
Or spiritually or whatever it is. And it's like by any means necessary. So I think one of the like qualities that did serve me very well from my previous life was like commitment, dedication. No chance I'm losing this one.
Yeah.
But it took a lot. Took asking for help. Took humility. It took faith would be a big one. You know, trust that it could be okay. Um, it forced, yeah.
It sounds like a level of grit and resilience that is lived that you just can't possibly ever comprehend by reading something.
So back to the credibility thing, it's like I can't explain. My wife saw it, my kids saw it, and they saw me do it every day. And to me, that's enough. You know,
Mm-hmm.
to me, that's enough. Is my daughter? I remember seeing my kids' eyes as they had just left to school 2 minutes, 3 minutes before the fire. When they came back up, we were in an area where there's not great cell phone reception. Luckily, they got my call to come back to the house. But my daughter returning, my oldest daughter Nova was should have been 7 at the time. Um, Seeing her look at me with fear in her eyes, and then connecting in and nodding her head, being like, "I see you," and she saw me day in and day out in bed, crying, screaming as I was getting my skin scrubbed off. Like, it's as raw and natural as possible. But it made sport feel like, it made entrepreneurship feel like, in terms of intensity, everything compressed into moment by moment by moment by moment by moment throughout.
Well, how many things in our life do we make so big, primary, important, but in those moments are actually one of the least important things?
Until it's flashed in your face. And I think that's, sometimes like we've heard a million times, sometimes these things happen for a reason. For me, part of me died in that experience and didn't come back. But the big thing was like, what are you doing with your life? I was so proud I had made these changes. I'd left Canada, I had moved to another country, tried to learn Spanish, looking to build businesses, but I still had all of these blocks, these
Old mental models, old structures.
tons of them. So the awareness that was gained was, I thought And we compare and we do whatever. Like I would say at that point, I'd compare. I'm doing this totally different than anybody's ever done it before, and it kind of was a feeling of like grabbing me by the shirt and being like, "You're not even close yet. You're not even close."
What's an old part of you that died that was necessary?
Well, so here's the healing. Like I don't know when it ends. It's kind of just an ongoing story. What part died? I would say performance, doing things for the sake of doing them because I should. And that would have been something that I prided myself on probably before, but in exposure to it, being like, you do so many things every single day, and in every single moment, you compromise yourself to appease, to round edges, to comfort other people. And not in the, maybe before that, I had been through an experience where I was like, I'm a recovered people pleaser, I like to say. I like to think I don't do those things, that I speak up for what after that moment being like, where do you do it? Not do you do it, where do you do it? So as the healing continues, I would say, it was a nice laboratory to be clearly inside the healing where I was in bed, locked in every day with a doctor scrubbing my skin because I didn't have to worry about the outside world. But as I healed, I was now reabsorbing with thinner skin, more sensitivity, physically, and like it felt like my skin looked. My skin was like translucent, right? The same type of energetics that I was working with in other spaces is now I'm going back in. I'm being forced to work on getting out of my lease and some legal costs associated with the fire. I'm dealing with a house sale in Canada. I'm dealing with going back to work, finances, all of these other things that have these pull towards performance again. So to answer your question, I felt like stuff died. It almost went blank slate like an Etch-a-Sketch. But as soon as I went back into outside of the laboratory, you start to feel them entertain your attention.
Try to pull you back in.
100%.
New skin, but try to get you back into the same old clothes, the same routine.
100%.
Well, and it's very fitting. So just for all of the listeners, when I'm engaging my team members, my guests, I say, what's the core theme you want to talk about? And you responded with wholeness. It's not a term that many use in leadership.
No.
But yet it's, well, I would say radically important to explore this concept of wholeness.
I think radically important. And I think it's a difficult word because I think of holistic and a holistic approach. That term and dealing with a whole person has been used a lot, I think, especially in, today's day and age with wellness and et cetera. But what I mean by wholeness is success without compromise.
So that would be a definition you'd lock in. Wholeness is success without compromise.
I think that's like the simplest. Language is difficult, but I think that's the simplest descriptor of it. And I think, the other side of it is like we can use words to associate what success is to us. What it isn't, what success definitely isn't, is anything that requires us to amputate any part of ourselves.
Okay, say more about that. That's fascinating. Immediately, I agree with it, but I want to know more about it.
Well, I think we're conditioned. I was conditioned as a kid growing up in Western Canada that you have to compromise and you have to give and take and you have to. I remember the feeling in my body of like, no, and continuing to do it anyway. On the flip side, if we did this Family Feud style and we asked 100 people on the street, When has your gut ever been wrong? Every single person I've ever asked that question to in my entire life says never. Never. So
Then
the
why don't we
question,
listen to it?
that's exactly what I'm saying. Not compromise, not that it has to be, rigid and stuck to your plan that you have, but why do we compromise on whatever that thing is?
Hmm.
Constantly compromise. It's never been wrong.
So, how does one be successful? How does one have a successful relationship? Be a collaborator if you have an unwillingness to compromise?
I so I think it comes into like what's the definition of compromise? A compromise is not without compassion. To not
Hmm.
compromise doesn't mean to not have compassion. Doesn't mean to not have recognition of another person's
Others'
experience.
needs,
Of
others'
course,
interests.
of
Yeah.
course. In fact, I would say that's the ultimate form of success, right? Is presence. We hear about coherence, but in those moments of conflict, it's easy to do all this stuff again in the laboratory when I'm healing by myself with just me and a bedpan and some flutes or whatever I'm listening to on my Spotify. It's another thing to do this with your family, under pressure, fatigued, maybe you haven't had enough sleep, you know. It's another thing to do it when you're dealing with outside family members or work demands or financial pressure or whatever it may be, or financial success.
Hmm. So the definition of wholeness is success without compromise. I wanna bounce to you a definition because in preparation for this, I thought, okay, well, what could a definition be? And one that I found interesting is that wholeness is your capacity to stay integrated while
Amen.
experiencing fear, grief, rage, doubt, cravings, all of the
Joy,
seductions,
everything,
joy.
everything, right? Everything, anything to stay integrated, I think was the word you use, is the opposite is fragmented. Is how many
Hmm.
times have we seen success achieved by, I've seen it in sport with Olympic medalists, Hall of Famers, professionals signing contract, fragmented.
Where in fragmented, you mean like losing parts of yourself in pursuit of this thing?
Well, so I would say if we go into sport, the athletes that have accomplished the most that I've seen in sports are often the ones struggling with the most fragmentation, the most pressure and demands, sponsors, contracts, all of these aspects that are not the fun joy of sports that we grew up with when we were 14 playing with our friends. So as they start to move towards the twilight of their career, sorry, this thing starts to come to the front of the frame. It starts to come to the front of the picture of like, I did a presentation when I had my gym, but it was around like legacy. What are you doing here? Who are you being here? Who are you being with your team? Very rarely are they concerned primarily with goals, wins, losses, medals, none of that. They're thinking, who am I while I'm here? And who am I when part of me dies in sport? Another blessing from sport is you get to experience death of identity. Who am I going to be on the other side of this?
Which
In
is
the present,
often very difficult transition.
one totally biased, but one that I've seen so many times and experienced to be like very difficult. I would say most are very unsuccessful in this space.
Well, and it's harder because you're often referred to as a former Olympian, a former Olympic medalist, a former
Yeah.
professional athlete.
So when you ask me about credibility, right, it's easy. I forget that I went to the Olympics. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of, is
You're
like,
you're proud of the fact that you forget that you went to the
I
Olympics.
forgot. And I remember, so the first Olympics I was around was 2002. And an athlete at that time I recall he got a tattoo that says it doesn't end here. It was such a ping in my brain. So I was a 20-year-old kid at that time. With Olympic hopes and dreams. But I was like, what an interesting concept because I've built my life on achievement, if I can go to the Olympics or make my family proud because I went to the Olympics. But this Ping, this beautiful human that showed me this, had the guts to get this tattoo on him, pinged my memory to be like, okay, so what happens beyond this? And people talk about it that way. But when you're in sport, it can be a pressure cooker of, it's fairly incestuous of like, that place matters so much. Sport matters so much. This is so important. Where when we zoom out, the things that are going on in the world, or if we're viewing ourselves from outer space, you can look down on Milano Cortina in the last 2.5 weeks, and it's not that important, and you're so much bigger than those accomplishments.
Well, I can't help when you think about the pressure on an athlete, a professional athlete, media, results, etc. The same thing with an executive. You've got shareholders, you've got a board of directors, you've got executive leadership team members. How do you prevent fragmentation when you've got all of those things pulling at you?
I think maybe the answer is similar to an athlete. I'd say practice, getting into practice of where do you integrate yourself? What practices do you have to integrate parts of yourself, body, mind, spirit? So I
Okay,
would say,
say more about how to integrate yourself. What does that mean? If someone's listening to that and saying, okay, I don't get it, what does that mean?
so I would say the first place to go is to your mind. So you might have KPIs, you have company culture, you have job titles, you have your education, and all of the beliefs that you've stacked up behind you. I think the first place to go is an audit of your belief system, of your mind. Which of these are my own? And which of these have I inherited or absorbed from family, societal, national identity, stories, myths, and could be beautiful, but an audit. And if you can start there, you'll realize very quickly that you've been wrong at least once. So I think a lot of people are stuck in this protection state where they don't want to audit it because they don't want to be wrong about anything. Because once you're wrong about one thing, you have to entertain the idea
You could be wrong about everything.
about the whole thing. So, sorry, go ahead.
Interesting. No, I love this concept because the inheriting your beliefs, inheriting your values, it's like
Sure.
you inherit this trunk full of goods and
Yeah,
you just let it occupy your space without asking the question, is this what I want in my space?
100%. So first, but that's an internal scenario. So if we're taking it back to executives, or before we even get to executives, you don't have to test this necessarily in the boardroom or in the meeting room. You can test this in your personal life, and probably better to start testing it there anyways.
Yeah. Yeah.
But instead of, I've internalized, I've processed which ideas are mine, but you're prompted every single day. Do you want another coffee, Jayson?
The answer is usually yes.
Sure, and it can be yes, but we're constantly compromising even there. Do you want it? Do you like this? Do you agree? So into a meeting, we see it all the time. Groupthink is a very hard thing. And when you get into organizational culture and organizational structure, it doesn't matter who you're with as an individual. Eventually, you will come into friction with something you disagree with because you feel that's your truth and your belief. So where do you vocalize that? Where can you practice and rehearse that in other aspects so that it becomes not just a place that you're comfortable and you feel safe, but becomes a superpower where you're able to recognize it, defend it, not defend it from a protection mechanism, but to stand behind it and commit to it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so as you're saying this, it's the question that comes to me is, what does wholeness look like? And what do people confuse wholeness with?
Wholeness, what does wholeness look like? I would say, what does wholeness feel like? So if we look, what I see, so I have some training in working with bodies, is what I see is like what it doesn't look like is holding patterns, is tension, is body language, is increased breath, increased heart rate, dilated pupils, all sign of a nervous system that's been hijacked and taken by something else's beliefs, stories, ideals, values, identity, etc.
So a dysregulated.
Dysregulation is probably layer one, is what
Okay.
it looks like.
Yeah.
So not always easy, and you can practice at home if you want to. Probably it's actually a great exercise. But where do you see people dysregulated? We have so much more practice. We have very little experience in a regulated state.
Hmm.
We're tired, you know? We're at work long hours. We are now like with this invention of this device, the phone, our attention is constantly being, I can't remember the word you said when I left the laboratory, seduced and pulled
Mm-hmm.
at all the time. It's one of the least friendly places least friendly times in history, I think, for our nervous system. We're not equipped for these things. So what does it look like to take some of those back and start to work towards regulation? The thing that comes in often, or has come in, I think, in recent history in the West is the popularization of the yoga practice. There's somewhere where you can usually see it and feel it. And it's such a distinct difference where you're like, oh, how come when I walk into this yoga studio, I instantly feel better? Because it's totally different than everywhere else you're going every single day.
Hmm. Stupid question.
Yeah.
But what makes wholeness important?
I think it's the only path to success. We've seen people countless times go down this pathway of success, net worth, titles, accomplishments, whatever it will be.
So
But your
real success.
real success requires listening to that spirit level that's often nonverbal. Maybe this isn't for you, or maybe it is, or maybe it needs to be bent this way. And going through, like, I'm not suggesting it needs to be or should be easy or without demand. That demand is designed to stretch you, stretch capacity, teach you things that you need to acquire and abilities as you step towards your greatest.
Hmm.
Anything that nudges you off when you're ignoring that gut feeling, that's the best example, because we know the feeling. When I say gut, I think everybody knows. I think 100 people on Family Feud. But it nudges you towards something. It likely is, and often is, not what you want it to be, but it's your path, and it's the path that it's going to have to fight you towards sooner now, or better now than later down the road.
Why do we discount or disregard that gut feeling?
I think, because we're programmed out of it. Our minds are programmable. You know, we inherit these stories, like you said, from the time we're born. We inherit these things that we don't have the ability to discern. So when you think about, a typical onboarding into life at home, societal, social, at all of those levels, what things encourage us to listen to our inner senses?
Hmm.
Think of the proportion of education we've had. The other stuff is super important as well. I'm not disregarding that side. But how much of your education is anti-intuition?
Mm-hmm. It has to be measured. It has to be seen. It has to be proven.
Yeah. How much of your education is encouraging of your own opinion? You know,
What's the difference between wholeness and happiness?
I think happiness is fleeting. I think wholeness is fleeting too, but I think happiness is, maybe an emotion. But I think when we look towards what wholeness would be, I think happiness is a part of that. But I think all of the emotions, being able to stay present with all of the emotions, is literally what wholeness requires. There's
So, yeah, if I'm a listener to this, if I'm listening to this and I'm asking, okay, I'm starting to see this wholeness piece, but how do I know if I'm living my life from a place of wholeness or if it's hollow?
yeah, I think, well, it requires an audit again, right? Of like, am I trying my best? Everybody would like to say that. I don't believe that's always the case. Um, I think the first place to start is, and we see this often when we do our ALP program. A lot of times, what people are learning as they go, they'll talk about pause, take a moment, you know, a container for awareness before they respond. A level deeper than that and into the body is to become aware of the breath pattern. We talked about yoga earlier. So yoga has long talked about the breathing pattern. I think one of the best ways to get into that space is, are you leading from a place of wholeness? Is to give yourself compassion, time, empathy, patience, and become more aware of your breathing patterns. So a lot of times, again, it's easier to tell where we're dysregulated and when we're out of it is when we're mouth breathing. We should be breathing through our nose 90% of the time,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So you can spend the next, 24 hours at varying moments checking in is like, where do we default to a panicked, a heightened state?
Hmm.
That panic or heightened state is physiologically based. We've talked about the amygdala. We talk about it in the ALP course as well. We are on alert, fear, all of these ideas, KPIs, tired. Not to stay in the laboratory recovering from the fire or whatever in your yoga class. It's to take it out into these places and to be like, how can I bend time and urgency and all these pressures that I feel in day-to-day life, regulate myself to give myself a glimmer of hope to respond from a holistic and integrated form.
Intentional,
Sure,
on
absolutely,
purpose.
100%. Coherent,
When
honest, you know?
coherent, honest. When have you been on a path that didn't feel whole and how did you recover?
It's a great question. I would say in sport, I joke about it. My wife is not an athlete. She's not a sport person. I think she failed phys ed. I think she was opting out all the time.
Hey, you
Uh,
learned so I didn't know you could fail phys ed.
there
So
you
you
go. Yeah,
learned something
I was
new.
getting 99s all the time. But I joke with her that I was cursed with athleticism. And I actually love sports. I love, not like as a fanatic, I love the petri dish of sports. But as sport became um, high performance and the pressures and it wasn't for me. I knew it. you know, I had a car accident. I was an all Canadian football player and a provincial champion in track and field. And I got a wake up call in a car accident. I would say much similar to the fire that I shared earlier, maybe my first experience. But rather than, not, I would say up until that point, I always knew I didn't fit in this place. There was more of me that was incomplete. And back then, I think we're from similar-ish generation of football or of athlete. You weren't supposed to do other things. You were a jock. It was
Yeah.
cliques and cults and whatever. And I was interested in the arts. I didn't have that opportunity. My parents were both sports fans. So when I recovered from that car accident, I would say I doubled down into sport. I have to do this thing because all of my identity is tied up into sport. So from that point on, I would say my body never recovered. A lot of the studies that I did on my body, I was going to kinesiology and going to the gym and trying to undo all the damage from car accidents, football, bobsleigh crashes, all of it at the same time. So that's how I learned to like work with with the body. But as I improved, as soon as I would go back into the sport, and I picked bobsleigh at this time, my body would revolt. So I'm in this, scenario of, yeah, I have therapy. I know how to work with the body. My body, if you think again about when you see people's dysregulation, holding, tight, tension, locked up, pain. A lot of the pain science that has come out in recent years, we can have, the same physiology. We can both have bulges in our spine and both feel completely different sensations. You may have debilitating pain, and I might be able to do all the things you would wish you could do, right? But as I went in, pain, anger, rupture, like the most fragmented possible. So I went to the Olympics hanging on by a thread. I tried to come back after that, didn't work. My body was just in absolute revolt. So when I left the sport, I immediately felt, this breath of fresh air. My body re-regulated. It came back together, and I could teach, and I had all this wisdom that I had acquired from working with my own body. And then I had the crazy idea, after having a gym, that I would go to the Olympics as a coach. And I was there for, 4.5 years. And guess what happened?
The body was sending you messages again?
Worse than ever. Full burnout. Shutdown burnout. Anger. My face was like pouring out. I don't even know what it was. Like, it was like swollen, red. I had kidney problems. I had a heart thing come up. I'm talking about, like, I'm 30 something years old,
At that time. Yeah.
Revolting. Absolute revolt of the body.
So your body is giving you incredible feedback that is telling you, are you aligned? Are you congruent? Are you operating in a space of wholeness, or has there been major drift? You've lost the plot on your life.
It's at that point, it's not saying, are you? It's saying you are out. You are out.
Yeah.
But I have people that I like to work with, but I have KPIs, but the team depends on me, but it's the Olympic Games. The body doesn't care.
It's just sending you a message. The question is, are you picking up? And if you aren't, then there's going to be a big universal foot sweep, a fire, a car accident, or
100%.
as we say in our programs, a nightmare that's going to invite you to wake up.
100%. 100%. If you can't get your mind pulled into this thing, I'm going to save myself and shut you down.
So why is it, or does it have to take a nightmare, an explosion, to shake the foundation that you've created for yourself so that you can get back to a path of wholeness?
No, absolutely not. And we talked about it at the start, like, we're auditing our own thoughts, auditing our own beliefs. The ideal situation for me, I would say the ideal situation for all of us, is it's not a nightmare. The nightmare leaves scars.
Yeah.
Right? It leaves its own stories and stuff that comes with it. Fighting, hanging out. That's not the body's. We're good with struggle. That's a different thing. That's survival. Ideally, it would be honored. So you said it earlier, I'm a father and husband. So I have a lot of my energy committed to our kids. Is how do we teach them along the way? How do we encourage intuition? How do we teach them to listen to their bodies? Not to consider their bodies, to clearly identify it, as important as reading and arithmetic, and algebra, not less. But when we go into the current physical education system, it looks very different than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's sports, it's performance, it's games, whatever it is. So being able to integrate that in with my kids is a blessing, because they didn't inherit that giant. It's just a smaller suitcase that they've taken on.
Yeah. They've still inherited some things, but just in a different package, different form.
And we are, like, I say programming, like the mind is, we're for sure programming our kids very intentionally, and not all of it is right. So my daughter often asks, like, do you want me to do what you say? I said, I do, but I would rather you do what you want than I do, not what you want, what you know is right, than do what I say.
Right.
She's so
Right.
confused that when I said it, she's like, I thought you wanted me to do what you want. And I was like, I do want that. But if we're going head to head here and we have to pick one thing, I want you to do what you feel is right. That's a muscle that you can exercise.
And then be able to back it up as to why
Back it
you
up.
chose to do
Yeah.
it.
And she does it. So there's fewer like accomplishments that I feel better about than when my kids back it up. When they say, no doubt, not fighting, right? Not like a giant conflict, that they have the skills and communication skills, patience, presence in the moment, regulation, all the things we talked about, where they can say, no, it's actually not true. Or they tell us we're wrong. My oldest daughter is very good at that. She'll say something and then we'll be like, no, it's this way. And then we'll go about it. And it ends up that she's right. And she's just like, and I was like, that skill, that's your own voice. That's your own ideas. It will be wrong sometimes.
Well, the thing I was going to say is this is, if I'm a manager, a leader in a business, this is exactly what leaders want. The same thing for you to be able to come to me and tell me what you think we should do, what is right for the business, the mission, the vision, to be able to back it up, to show
Well,
me that maybe my initial perspective was wrong.
I, so I would challenge a little bit on that of like, yes, they say they want that, you know, every leader says they want that. That leader that says that, it will require a higher level of capacity for them to deal with a team of people that have their own ideas. We don't have practice there, you
Yeah.
know? So auditing, like even our onboarding in a corporate setting is like, where are we encouraging these types of, where are we finding these types of people that
Yeah.
have this thing in them, that have been encouraged? And how do we continue, really what we say S&C, but it's athletic development that I did in sport. Human development is like, how are you developing, recruiting, developing, retaining, and continuing to develop these things that you say you want? And then when they get there, they're hard for you because
Yeah.
you have capable.
You have capable people, or as we often say in our accelerated leader programs, you've cultivated an environment of agents
100%.
rather than objects, where the object is, well, I'll just do what you want me to do,
Yeah.
versus agents challenging the method, the means, and the way that we do things here.
Yeah. And so often we hear leaders like, hey, I want it to free me up to do other things. There's an audit there of like, do you? Because that's a higher level.
Yeah.
You haven't done that before. You have lots of good ideas. Putting them into action is a new thing. And now
Yeah.
you're outside of your comfort zone. And it's that pressure, like, and it's a mindset thing. Pressure pushing everybody up towards the top. For you, if you create that environment, if I create that with my wife and my kids and my family, the pressure is you either got to rise or you're out. I'm competitive. I tell my wife all the time, I'm not going to let you out wholeness me. you know,
Well,
I'm not going to
okay,
let you out.
that's a new level. A wholeness competition. How do you measure that?
I'm not going to be the one dragging us down, And I specifically her, she's the best example of this. I picked her for a reason. I chose her for a reason. So it's,
I love it.
drawing me towards my inspiring, pushing, challenging me towards my highest capacity for this thing. But I'm not
Well,
going to
that's
be
it.
behind. Yeah.
Yeah. You She will not out wholeness you, meaning that you are committed to standing in the fire, the discomfort, the audit, and the exploration, so that
Yeah.
you aren't compromising or committing an infraction of self-betrayal. Now that's my interpretation.
Yeah, and like the competition element is like, I think the Latin origin of that word is like together better. Is like it is competitive because I'm not going to be the reason you're not able to come through in your fullest expression. No possible way. I love you far
Mm.
too much for that. You know, and can we take that? That's like a particular relationship, husband and wife, dad and father and mother. But can we take that type of scenario into some of our relationships that we work with.
Well, I mean, it makes total sense. And there's that saying where your true friends don't accept you who you are.
Mm,
They hold you to the standard of what they know you can be.
right.
And isn't that the ultimate expression of love, care, and want for somebody?
I think so. I think there's the idea of when you say hold them to it, I'm like, I think we don't know what that looks like. And we can get trapped into like a vision of what that looks like. But to really champion someone else, you know, she's been, I don't a countless amount of people. She's almost unrecognizable from the person that I met. Like, yeah, joke around. No, like not the same person. And there's nothing that I want more than to allow her to become whoever she wants to be. And I like, I think about the ALP program. One of my favorite exercises is the brand exercise. And people come out of that and they're like, oh, yeah, I have a brand and I have my best year yet. And I'm going to do this for a year. You're allowed to change who you want to be any time you want. You're
Yeah.
allowed to be a totally new person anytime you want. And ideally, it doesn't take a fire or a car accident to get you into that place.
The caveat is you get to be a new person. You get to have a new dream whenever you want. However, make sure it's not someone else's.
Yeah. And I think, like, yeah, maybe that's an oversight for me for a little bit. I assume with, I, maybe this is, here's a belief. I think everybody wants to grow into that thing. I think that spark wants to continue to grow, and we don't have enough championing of each other as human beings that encourages that along the way. So when you have right relationship, if you go into, practice presence and coherence with the people around your workplace and you really commit to this, I think organically they will grow towards their highest self.
Here's what comes to mind when you say that. Is it because if I'm fragmented, if I am more hollow than whole, then by no means do I want you to have that thing that I don't have?
You mean as the leader?
As the leader, as a person in the community, do you think there's a human condition that if I'm fractured, fragmented, and don't feel whole, that's the reason why the co-elevation won't happen?
Um, I don't think so. I think we're just so unsupported in environments and in relationships that actually nourish that part of us, the other part of us. You know, I think when we experience it, like it's such a rich experience to walk out of a yoga class, or maybe it's not a yoga class. We call it our happy places, wherever that is. I was at the library today. It's so nourishing to walk out of those regulated, rich places where you have actual human connection. I think that part of us will always outshine the other part that you're talking about.
Mm. So I want to underscore this because whatever it is, a yoga studio, a library, a golf course, whatever,
Yeah.
it's what is the place that nourishes you? The place where you feel connected, regulated.
And how do you well, not what is the place, it's how do you transform the places you go and bring it with you. We live in a different country, we move around, we do whatever, but the point is that you can stay present wherever you are and have that feeling be felt and experienced by other people.
Mm. Mm.
Yoga class, recovering
Yeah.
from a fire, under pressure with KPIs, wherever it is, how do you have that? Because we feel it. We're wired. Our internal senses are wired for that.
Hmm. Okay, we're gonna take a bit of a leap. We're gonna jump into a segment called True or False.
Sure.
I'm gonna read a statement. You give me a straight up answer, and if it triggers a story or a statement around why, give it to us. But there's no fence sitting. You make a choice and back it up. True or false? You must be able to accept death to get closer to wholeness.
False.
Okay. Back it up. What has you say false?
I think accept is a hard lined word. I think it's hard line, and it's hard to accept something that we don't, especially in the West, understand well. I think you must audit your belief system on death. Absolutely.
Well, let me give a different perspective. You sit with a dying parent, a dying friend. There are things that often emerge clearer and invite you to be more ruthless with the things that maybe you felt were important previously.
Yeah.
And close to death may not mean your own. It may mean death often puts us in a reflective space.
Sure.
Okay, true or false, Morgan? Balance, this concept of balance is mostly propaganda, that life in reality has seasons and wholeness in many ways is seasonal.
False. I think wholeness is not seasonal. Wholeness is demanded at the extremes. At the extremes. When the most is demanded of us, and when we're chilling on the weekends.
So if I understand you correctly, that it's in chaos, it's in conflict, it's in the heat that wholeness is demanded most.
And in calm and in joy and in pleasure, all of those things. It's present in all of it. Is the point, is to work towards that. That's what balance looks like.
That's the objective.
Yeah.
True or false, wholeness is not possible without discipline.
True.
What has you say true? That's the first true you've said. What had you say true?
It's a commitment. It's a commitment to choosing, which I think is what discipline is, doing the best you can in multiple environments, in multiple places. Yeah, it's easy in yoga class. It's easy, and we see all these like plant medicine retreats, ayahuasca. It's easy to do it in the ceremony. People go and are doing all these things, and you can't be present in your body for 15 seconds when you get home.
It takes discipline, commitment, practice.
Because it's easy in the ceremony where everything's perfect for you.
Curated environments, a laboratory, it's easy.
For sure.
Okay, true or false? Most people don't want wholeness. What they want is permission.
What is permission? What do you mean by permission?
Permission to do the thing that I want. Permission to be the person I actually want to be.
I would say true. I think most people think that's what they want.
Mm-hmm. But in the end, it will leave them.
Well, it's object versus agent again. Somebody has to grant this to me. Somebody has to give everybody, has done this to me. Agency.
Okay, the last true or false question. You cannot be whole while maintaining unrepaired relationships.
False. Some of them you got to cut off. Some relationships are about saying no to.
And leave them unrepaired and let them go?
Recognizing what they are and what they were there for. And we get stuck so often in this current, collective consciousness of going back into stuff, going back into our stuff, SOS. Not always, but that's for you. Somebody can't tell you which ones you should leave and which ones you should not leave, which ones you should repair and which ones you should move on from. That's
well, and what I'm hearing when you say that is there's a form of internal repair when you choose to let go and stop carrying that load. So 100%. You can be,
100%. And in relations, we're misunderstood, right? Like you have to be good. You go to bed with yourself every night, just you. After I kiss my wife, it's me by myself.
And that's the one that you have to face.
It's the most important one. Everything comes from that, you know?
Okay, let's jump to would you rather. I often say that leadership is just a big game of would you rather. It's a bunch of trade offs. Where am I going to put my decision, my resources, my efforts? And there's often a trade off that has a cost.
Sure.
So I'm going to present some very similar to true or false. No fence sitting. Pick one and then back it up. The first one: would you rather know the real reason you're driven, even if it's ugly, or keep believing the noble story?
I would rather know the real reason. I would rather know the real reason. Like, I don't know. For me, I'm on a runaway train to the truth. I want to know. I want to know all of it.
What happens when the track runs out on that runaway train?
When the track runs out on that runaway train of truth, I think there we are. I think that's the place that we're trying to get to. I think that's what the seat of truth is. You know,
Is basking in the wonder if this baby's still going to fly when that track runs out, or what's going to happen?
but I think that's where the mind, in many ways, like if the mind is leading that thing, if the spirit, like I would say, I'm spirit led, right? The spirit part of me demands to know what's at the end of that, what the reason is. Not over explaining the reason. I want to get to the where the tracks end. The mind forecasts what if, how about this, have you considered this? It projects all of these things, and it's important for doing that, right? For preventing us from being attacked by saber-toothed tigers. That's not what this is. I do want to know the truth. Absolutely.
You say spirit led. What does it mean to be spirit led?
I think it's back into that, like the easiest way to digest it. I think we have so much anecdotal evidence from religion. You had a great draw from we've so far, I think everybody that's lived on this planet has died, and we have so much anecdotal evidence of like the things that matter. And I think that's the place where spirit comes in the clearest, yet we're often in the other rut, I would say. So for me, being in that laboratory, experiencing a near death experience, I don't, I will not, it would be completely untrue for me to say that I'm only led by the brain. Still plays into everything I'm doing. Good, bad, or good, bad, whatever. Spirit led means that gut thing we talked about at the front is where the majority of my decision making comes from. The majority of my awareness comes from.
If someone's listening to this and thinking, I don't even know where to start to be more spirit led or gut influenced. How do I even develop that without having to spend 3 weeks on a bed getting my skin scraped off?
Right. Well, I think it comes through like the body and the spirit are very closely intertwined. So something like yoga, something like running, like a movement practice, we call it a bunch of other things, but we get into this space that feels childlike. Again, spirit is like pre-verbal, right? It's hard to put language to it, but when you feel it, you've felt it. And when you feel it and you're like, if somebody can tell you that's it, you're like, oh, I knew that thing. I felt
Mm.
that laying in the park beside my parents' house the summer when I was 11 years old, and the sun came from behind that cloud. you know I feel that when I hear my favorite composer, famous Swiss composer, whoever it is, right? We feel it in different ways. So it's more identifying where they feel it. And I think I think modern religion has done some disservice is people are looking for it to be only religion. I think finding it in other places, in nature, in music, in relationship, in food is one of my favorite places. It's everywhere. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Okay, the last would you rather. Would you rather have 10% less ambition or 10% less fear?
Percent less fear. I think we're overexposed on the perception of fear at this point in society. I don't think ambition is a problem, you know? It's where does it come from? A lot of times it's actually the fear side is where it's coming from anyways.
What's driving ambition?
100%.
Will I be enough?
100%. But I don't think ambition on its own and you know, sometimes people come out of these plant medicine ceremonies or yoga classes trying to strangle or suffocate ambition. I don't see any problem with ambition. It's the other stuff.
Mm-hmm. If someone's listening to this and they say, okay, you know what? I really want to do the work. I want to get on a strong path towards wholeness. What's the worst advice someone could get to begin that path and do that work?
Work harder. It's the worst advice possible. Double down on what you're doing. Just do more of it.
Work harder.
Terrible advice.
What makes that terrible?
It's not working. It doesn't work at the Olympics. It's not about hard work. We work hard. People are really trying. When you look around you, people are really trying their best. We're talking about you need to do something differently. Who you've been to this point is not working for you. That doesn't necessarily mean a complete overhaul. We talk about it again, the ALP. Maybe it's a teardown for some people. Maybe it's a couple lights. You have to do something differently. There's a request or a demand for change.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a knockdown and rebuild renovation.
But work harder. I deal with this with clients that I train is everybody wants to work harder. We want to run further. We want to lift more weights, spend more time, things that we can easily quantify. I think that's when work harder. Okay, now I'm working harder. Now I'm working hard, so I get this. No, absolutely not. We're talking about a quality, right? So even as we talked about the soul level and the spirit level, it's hard to quantify everything. But we live in this society right now that everything's KPIs, start times, finish time, wins, losses, net worth, all of these things that we can measure, right? But we have to break that. That's maybe harder is not the right word. Maybe it's deeper. What do you really want here? Harder?
Do you want harder?
Harder? That's the opposite. Everything is hard enough. It's hard enough. And it's hard to get you to do things differently. It's supposed to be hard. It's starting to drift towards this nightmare. And it's hard because we're not at the bottom yet, or maybe we are, but the difficulty is to either adjust your path or to build capacity. But
and I would even say that working harder is perhaps one of the easier things you could do. It's experimenting in the uncomfortable, the different, getting outside of your habitual norms. That is actually the hard work.
Yeah, and I would say lazy, I'll just work harder. I'll just work more. We'll get more done if I just do 60 hours. We see this with leaders all the time. I'll just do their work for them. That's terrible. Objectively, you have to do it differently. Well, they don't do it. You have to deliver it differently. You have to deliver it differently. You have to refine, sophisticated, right? Everybody at the Olympics, this is like, from sport, everybody works hard. Everybody that goes to that thing, excellence, a colleague of mine, Todd Hayes, says, excellence is the price of admission at the Olympics. Working hard is the price of admission to getting on the national team. That's back there.
Yeah.
We're talking about a refined, sophisticated, and when we start to get into organizations that manage people, manage money, that are trying to leave a legacy, I don't think we're exposed enough to like a sophisticated approach, because a lot of these leadership books are talking about work harder. I actually don't know if that's true either. I don't think it's leadership books. I think that's a story that's come in from previous generations.
Yeah. What working hard is glorified, but everyone listening to this, write this down, because this Morgan Alexander quote should be a bumper sticker, that working harder is one of the laziest things you can do.
That's it. There it is.
Pursue sophistication, pursue the refinement and experimentation. So, Morgan, I feel like we could talk for a couple of more hours, but it's time to land the plane. If a listener remembers one thing about wholeness after our entire discussion, what is it?
One thing, we touched on it right at the start. The thing that you have control of is your breath. Start to pay attention. Start to notice how it behaves in certain moments. And that's the gateway between body and mind. And in that space, you're going to find moments of spirit as well. So notice, study, pay attention to, and some element of change how you breathe.
I love it. So if you're listening to this, find something to experiment with that you've heard from Morgan, put it into practice. That's what being in the laboratory is all about. Morgan, we're separated by countries. We're in much different locations. But hey, from being in a bobsled together to being on the podcast together, I really appreciate you being here to unpack this important topic.
Our hearts stay connected. Thanks for having me.
They do, and they will. Thank you, my friend.
Talk soon.